And we're live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Billy Musio, Bradley Stalder here for the Fantasy Football Fanalist. Tonight's show is centered around recent NFL news, signings, and the beginning to free agency. As a reminder, though, free agency officially begins on March 17th, 2021. But teams right now can tag players, extend players, etc. right now. So we're starting to see some of those kind of fall into place as news starts to develop with releases and signings today, like we saw. And we'll get to some of the names here shortly. But I'm excited to see free agency. This is like one of my favorite times of the year. Free agency and the draft around the corner, and I'm really excited to see what starts shaping the NFL. Our dynasty teams, for those of you who are diehards like us that never take a day off in fantasy football, and it really helps us kind of set the foundation for the new year. So before we kick off the show, though, I'd like to let everybody know that we updated our website domain. It was just getting confusing. We had, marketing kind of on FF Fanalists. We had marketing on Fantasy Football Fanalists, and we had marketing all over the place. So we made sure that we simplified it. We changed our domain to fantasyfootballfanalist.com. Makes it easy for you to find us. Makes it easy for you to interact with us on all of our platforms. So make sure to note the changes. In the meantime, the domain, if you type it in as FF Fanalist, it'll automatically transfer you over to the website. So there's no hassle. It automatically moves you over, but just make note of it for the future. Well,
this is all for the good of our listeners too. Just making it easier to navigate, making it easier to find the resources that you need, that we will be providing all throughout the off season. And as drafts come up, we're excited to provide those for you. So making it easier.
Yeah. Well, Bradley, anything fun and exciting going on inside the Stalder house?
Billy, we've got a lot of things exciting, and now it's expanding outside of the house. So there's been a lot of utilization of the outside of our house, playing. Although at the same time, like we had a lot of snow just like last weekend here in Michigan. And my parents came up and played with the girls, and they made snowmen, and it was a lot of fun. Took pictures, and now, like just yesterday, it was like 50 something degrees outside. So almost all the snow is gone. And now the girls are playing a lot more outside. So more fun is happening outside the house than in. But yeah, it's been Billy, like we needed these 2 weeks, didn't we? Like,
we really did.
I feel like I needed a break. You needed a break. We had a lot going on too, outside of it. I have my grad classes that are thankfully winding down here. And I know you're getting even more into the flight. And so that's really exciting. So, this is a time where we can afford to start speculating a little bit more, and we can start in fantasy football, and it doesn't require us to, there's not enough news to navigate a lot, but in those 2 weeks, we've had a lot of things going on. So
it was a good time to take 2 weeks off because,
yeah.
I mean, when you're missing 3 or 4 days and the groundbreaking news is Kyle Rudolph is released, it gives us a chance.
Fellow Notre Dame alum Kyle Rudolph.
It gives us a chance to gather some information and have some talking points.
All right. Well, that means we have some news. It's not that nothing happens in 2 weeks. Kyle Rudolph, we'll talk about Kyle Rudolph a little later. But we'll kick off today's show, or tonight's show, this morning's show for me, I suppose, with the Patriots quarterback situation. Cam Newton recently expressed interest in returning to the Patriots. This shouldn't be news to anyone. It seemed like he really had a positive relationship with Bill Belichick, admired him as a coach, spoke nothing of his praises. But in a recent interview, he said that after his early season COVID positive test and sitting out, he had like a fog the rest of the season. And that really got in the way of his performance. And I mean, we saw the difference. The first few weeks of Cam, he was looking like his MVP, top quarterback one form. But after the COVID positive test, the rest of the season, he looked normal. He looked human. He looked below average. The arm looked shot. Like decision making wasn't as positive. I don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be for the Patriots. They have seemed very cagey about it, but Cam Newton at least expressing interest. I think he's going to garner interest either there or maybe the Washington football team.
Yeah, I mean, Ron Rivera, him joining back up would make sense, and especially seeing them make some room today by releasing Alex Smith on parting ways mutually and saving $15 million in cap space. I think it was. I could see it happening. But I mean, how much of this is an excuse? I mean, he played like shit the second half, right? Outside that, 3/4, it was like what, first 3-4 weeks he was top 5. He was top 5.
Well, like that Seattle game, he looked so good.
Yeah, he was. I mean, if you remember, I wrote that little quick blurb there for 3Co Sports, and after watching the tape and about him looking vintage form for the first 3-4 weeks, and as soon as he hit COVID, yeah, maybe it was COVID fog, or maybe, you know what, maybe they just started realizing, hey, we just remembered you can't throw the damn ball, and all we have to do is take away your run game, and next thing you know, they exploit the weakness here. And that's what I think teams did, honestly. I think it's a built-in excuse. He played like crap. He looked like crap after that. And the first few weeks he was dynamite because he was running the ball 19 times a game and he was scoring. And the little times he did throw, he was doing accurate. But just like Cam always does, he starts, looking more ineffective and missing his targets as the season progresses. And we saw that earlier than we normally do.
I have to be concerned on two fronts. One is that the Patriots just didn't have enough talent to surround Cam when he faltered. Like Julian Edelman was hurt, Sony Michel was hurt, Damian Harris was hurt, Rex Burkhead was hurt. They didn't have a tight end. Jacoby Myers was only one of 2 players this season to not have a receiving touchdown and still have 80 targets. Him and Alex Erickson, I think, were the only two in NFL history. And so, I mean, Jacoby Myers was the one throwing touchdown passes. They needed injection of
had a better arm too, by the
way. So with all of that being said, I think that was one thing with regard to the Patriots. But I think that teams, especially who are not familiar with Cam, have to be concerned about his mental toughness. Like, if you're going to spend 3/4 of the season using COVID fog as an excuse, like, I get it. We're in the middle of
pony up. You're in the NFL, like,
right. We're paying you a lot of money to be a winning team and be a winning quarterback on a team that has a legacy of winning, and you're following in the footsteps of the greatest of all time. Like, there is additional pressure, but prospective teams who are looking at Cam Newton have to think about that. Like, is he the leader we want on our team? And I think that that's a legitimate question, given him freely admitting that it got in the way of his performance this year.
Yeah, I think it's a built-in excuse because he played like crap and he's falling in the line and trying to figure things out. But I mean, you bring up a valid point. There's no weapons there, and that's part of the reason why Tom Brady decided to leave. Right?
Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, or Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even in comparison, right? And then Gronk wasn't going to come back and play for Bill Belichick again. I mean, he wanted free of him to begin with. So look what happened. So I would say Brady made the right decision. We're going to see what happens here at the Patriots, but I would be surprised if they re-sign him. I really do.
I think Cam is more of a bridge quarterback. Bring him in somewhere else where he'll compete. So we'll see where Cam Newton lands. I don't think he's done. I think he's still capable. Like, he can still run the ball. Like, he still had that. And when he schemed that way, he might be a valuable. I'm just thinking off the cuff here, but if Seattle,
Washington would make sense just because they have a strong defense. All he has to do is not turn the ball over. They can run the ball with him. They can run the ball with Gibson. I mean, for all my Scary Terry shares, it would suck. I'm going to be honest, but like, let's face it, like, outside Scary Terry, they don't really have any other wide receivers who are all that fantastic, right? Their next best up was Sims and Harmon, who tore his ACL in the beginning of the year. So if they're a ground and pound team here.
Antonio Gandy Golden Love.
Yeah, none at all. And so it's a ground and pound game here with a solid defense. So it's more old school football. And back to Ron Rivera, they could just pound the rock and throw it 12 times a game like they did and get it done. And the defense is going to carry him.
That might be the winning formula, that a game manager who's not going to turn the ball over, and Cam is at least good enough to not do that too much. A possible fill-in, though, for the Patriots has been speculated to be Marcus Mariota, the current backup quarterback for the Raiders. He's been the most interesting Raiders quarterback on the block, although there has been chatter about Derek Carr. And given the recent praise from John Gruden and Mike Mayock, the GM, we can expect that Carr will probably be the one quarterbacking for the Raiders here in 2021. But many teams have been calling about Mariota. He showed out in the one game, I think it was against the Chargers, where Carr was injured, and he just seemed mobile. He seemed like he was making good decisions, pushing the ball down the field. So I don't know if he showed enough to garner a full-time gig, but I think he's worth bringing in for competition. I don't think he's done, and his $11 million salary is an interesting or tricky point, because you don't want to just pay $11 million for a backup. I think that's what the Raiders were planning on, was to flip him anyways. So we'll see if the price is right for Mariota come draft season.
I'd have more confidence in Mariota than I would with Cam Newton at this point in his career. I think Mariota, in his brief relief of Derek Carr, actually looked pretty damn good that game. And I just think he has a lot more gas in the tank, I should say.
And a lot more tank in his gas.
Am I right? A lot more tank in his gas. And I think that he, let's face it, he's not old either. Like, he's still a fairly young quarterback. And if he finds the right position and right team, he could become a franchise quarterback for them. A lot would have to fall into place, but it is a possibility.
Him pulling a Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, he doesn't have the Adam Gase excuse, but yes.
Well, we've got another team that we got to talk about here, Billy. The Houston Texans and their running back situation. You were commenting off air. I didn't even know Duke Johnson was released, and it was actually pretty quiet.
It was very quiet.
It was very quiet, and we think about not just that the Texans cut Duke Johnson, but a lot else has happened in their running back room. They signed Dontrell Hilliard, formerly of the Browns organization. They re-upped Buddy Howell, and they restructured David Johnson. There's, I think, enough carries to go around where the Texans may still be looking for a grinder running back like a Marlon Mack type, who can fill in 120 carries, give David Johnson a breather. Johnson's not a young pup anymore. There's not a lot of pressure for Marlon Mack. I think that could be a good fit. But this running back situation is worth monitoring, given the lack of depth, like the lack of talent, Duke Johnson not being utilized well, and just thinking about what a waste of I think it was a 3rd round pick that they traded for Duke Johnson.
Yeah, every team seems to just not use him correctly. It's just amazing. It's either like he's secretly really
in Cleveland, where he was a top 12.
Yeah, it's like he's either secretly like really bad at football, which I'm not buying, or just teams just don't utilize him. And either way, though, like David Johnson had a pretty sneaky good year. He actually had a
high in yards per rush.
Yeah, very, very productive year, actually. And so it's nice to see him come back, but as we all know, elephant in the room, who's their quarterback going to be? Because I'm telling you right now, Deshaun Watson will probably sit out before he plays for the Texans. And this could really kind of play out to be a really sticky situation here in Houston.
We'll talk about Deshaun Watson a little bit later, but as you mentioned, this Deshaun Watson news, you kind of buried the lead there. It's been a lot of talk, and it seems ebb and flow every couple weeks about Deshaun Watson's still digging in his heels. But the running back room, who's going to be in the backfield, I think is still up in the air, and same with the wide receiver core. We don't have it mentioned here in the outline, but where Will Fuller goes, if he re-ups with the Texans, is going to be worth monitoring. And who follows up? Is it going to be Kiki QT? Is it going to be Chad Hansen, my boy Chad Hansen? Is Randall Cobb going to step up? Brandon Cooks was a stud, but you wonder how much that was dependent on the talent of Deshaun Watson. Okay, real talk, Brandon Cooks is a stud, but how much of a downgrade if it's a rookie quarterback coming in or some veteran whose arm is shot?
Significant downgrade. I mean, Deshaun Watson's a top 5 quarterback in this NFL, and if you have someone in there, who's new to the NFL, there's a steep learning curve, and to be able to just come in and yeah, you have a couple decent wide receivers to throw to, but let's face it.
I'm glad that you could mention Chad Hansen as a decent wide receiver.
Yeah, I said decent with an asterisk there. It's and yes, Brandon Cooks has had some really great years. I think don't quote me on this, but I think it's like 5 out of like 6 were top wide receiver 1 numbers.
1,000 receiving yards.
Yeah, mm-hmm. and he's but quarterback is what makes or break a team, and as we saw here with JJ Watt signing with Arizona, he chose a team for less money dependent upon a quarterback, and if you have a lesser quarterback, it's going to really affect the overall team here.
Yeah, JJ Watt said that he wanted to come because of Kyler Murray. Like, that was the number one reason. You mentioned it, Billy. So we got to keep that in mind. Who's the leader of the team? Who's the leader? And the Eagles are going to be looking for a new leader from the past. Carson Wentz traded to the Indianapolis Colts. We mentioned that on the previous podcast. But they're also having some changes here in the wide receiver core with Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey being released. So that may free up the likes of Jalen Reagor, Travis Fulgham, Greg Ward was tendered this offseason. So that should really free them up. And of course, the tight ends, or hopefully just a singular tight end. There's no news yet on Zach Ertz, but what are the prospects of Dallas Goedert going into 2021?
I love Dallas Goedert. I mean, I had him ranked high last year, and I remember you and I kind of battling back and forth on our own rankings, because I had him as a top 10 tight end last year. And we talked off air. If Dallas Goedert if Zach Ertz leaves Philly here, Goddard to me is a top 5 tight end. We're talking, sneaky targets, 110, 120 target range. He's going to be the 1A in this passing game, probably to Jalen Reagor as 1B, if not the number 2 option as Reagor. And I think Goddard is going to be the focal point through this offense through the air if Ertz leaves. And like I said, I could see it being something sneaky like a George Kittle year, where he just kind of comes out and beasts just because he's the number 1 option and he's being targeted left and right. And let's face it, Goddard has looked good. He's looked great in the games. And even when Ertz was Zach Ertz and not what he is now, Goddard was still around and performing. So with him completely off the field, and with a change at helm and a change of the coach, with Peterson being gone, the air was pointing up for Dallas Goedert for me, and I'm buying him everywhere that I can.
Yeah, before the price skyrockets with Ertz hopefully on the way out, but we'll see. We'll see if Ertz is still there. I'm still confident in Dallas Goedert as well. I agree with you, Billy. I think his ceiling is a top 5 or so. I think that range. Possible George Kittle, but there's also Travis Kelce there at the top. So we'll see what the future holds for the Eagles tight end position. Speaking of tight end positions, Tyler Eifert for the Jacksonville Jaguars, free agent pickup from the Cincinnati Bengals. His option was declined the team option was declined for 2021. I would anticipate that the Jaguars are in the free agency market. There's not a lot of roster depth here. Shaughnessy and Oliver, I believe, are the top options, but Oliver didn't get much work this season. So and Eifert somehow still stayed healthy. Like, he played almost all of the games.
Because he played like 30% snaps.
He did.
Like, he didn't even break like 50% other than like one game.
He was a top 18 tight end, which tells you how bad the tight end position is.
Well, that's the thing, is like outside the top 3, like, 4 through 12 are like with like minuscule points. It's like how quarterbacks used to be, right? And so, but I could see them signing someone like a Kyle Rudolph, like a veteran presence there for their rookie quarterback coming in to pair with their young wide receiving core. So there's options here this year at tight end right now with a few, like to mention, and coming up soon here, Delanie Walker coming back. And yes, he's old as dirt, but But you know what? In an offense that young, like you need someone of that presence, right?
You need
That's
some leadership for sure. And the likes of Walker, the likes of Rudolph, there's plenty of tight ends that we will be keeping our eyes on for sure. All right. So here's a big one. The Cowboys, there has been positive interest in extending Dak Prescott. And in fact, so much that the Cowboys have expressed confidence that Prescott's rehab has gone so well that they want to do a long-term deal. So that's great news for all of our Amari Cooper, all of our CD Lamb shares. I don't know what the future is going to hold for Michael Gallup, but you have to think that this is arrow pointing way up for the fantasy prospects of those players. If there's anyone who is uncertain about Dak Prescott, I know that the Cowboys, like, they were uncertain, but now we've been starting to hear some positive vibes. And when Jerry Jones wants to get a deal done, he gets it done. So we'll see how it goes, but this is the best news we've heard of Dallas in a long time regarding Prescott.
Yeah, we saw how this offense performed when he wasn't on the field. It was pitiful. It really was. So my only concern is he had a second surgery, and it was kind of hush-hush. There wasn't a lot of news on it, but they went back in and kind of cleaned some things up from the initial surgery. And but a vote of confidence, I guess, on Dallas side is they have all that information for them. They have all the news, all the medical information. So the fact that they're, getting some contract negotiations and process moving forward, I think that's a positive sign to his recovery, because I don't think that would happen if they were concerned with that second surgery. So as much as I am a little concerned, I think that the signing, or I should say that the future possibility of a signing kind of relieves that anxiety for me.
It's good news. And that's what I'm taking it as at this point. Because no news was no news for the Cowboys for a while, and we know how Jerry Jones has played hardball in the past. We immediately comes to mind when he was negotiating with Zeke about his contract. He was like, Zeke who? That's not been Jerry Jones toward Dak Prescott. And so to hear this news out of Dallas, I am much more optimistic that a deal gets done. The Buccaneers, speaking of quarterbacks, have expressed interest also in extending their quarterback, Tom Brady, for an extra year. So remember that Brady signed a 2-year deal with the Buccaneers this past offseason, and he's 1 year into it. And there's one more. So the Buccaneers are thinking, maybe we can squeeze 2 more years out of Tom Brady, see if we can get one more championship. So I think this is good for the Bucs, good for the Bucs pass catchers. I think it's good for Tom Brady. I don't think Tom Brady slowed down at all during the season. And if anything, the only reason why he slowed down in the first 12 games was because their bye week was in week 13. From that point on, after the bye week, the Buccaneers were undefeated. Like they formulated a game plan. They knew how to use all their weapons, and it looked like everything just came together. So finding out what Brady had in the tank, and he looks like he still has plenty left.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? He just came off a Super Bowl, and he was just as good as he has been. He had one of the best deep ball completion rates in the NFL this year. So, I mean, well, why not, right? Just sign him, get him extended. He's going to be like 47 when he's done with this contract, so it doesn't matter. He's going to retire. He's going to be like 55 years old. He's going to get his AARP card, and then he's gonna end his NFL career. But I mean, he's been one. I hated him on the Patriots, and then I actually found myself rooting for him on Tampa Bay, and I was like, "What am I doing? Like, I'm rooting for Tom Brady here," and I hated myself. But you know what? As much as I've hated him throughout his career, he has been one hell of a football player, and I can't help but say, "Wow, look what he has done." And especially this year, at 43 years old, winning a Super Bowl in a new team, in a new system, with a new coach. It's phenomenal.
With no off season because of the pandemic. Do you remember this story?
It's like you hate him because of it, but he's so damn good. It's like you have to respect it. You do.
There's a story. Did you hear this one where he thought he was going to Byron Leftwich's house, and he walked into the wrong house in the off season, and the guy was like, "What the hell are you doing here?" He's like, "Hi, I'm Tom Brady. Is this Byron Leftwich's house?" He's like, "No, he's next door."
That's awesome.
Oh,
If
man.
it was Texas, he gets shot. So luckily it's Tampa, I guess.
Thankfully. He's like, all right, I'm with good people. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on here. The Raiders released wide receiver Tyrell Williams, who promptly signed a 1-year deal. Like, it was a quick turnover with the Detroit Lions. Remember, Tyrell Williams missed all last year with a torn labrum, and with signing with the Lions, he instantly becomes the number 1 wide receiver on this team under contract, especially if they don't franchise tag Kenny Golladay.
Well, you don't love Quintez Cephas? Come on, Bradley.
We will see. I'm not holding my breath on Quintez Cephas. Look, I'll root for the young players, but Tyrell Williams, I think, remember back in 2016, Williams went 69 for 1,059 yards, 7 touchdowns. He had 113 targets for Phillip Rivers. This was also when Mike Williams was on the team. This was when Keenan Allen was on the team. This was when Hunter Henry was on the team. Like, there were weapons. There were balls to go around to two players in this Chargers offense, and Tyrell Williams showed out. And I'm bullish on Williams as a bounce back, dirt cheap, late round, forgotten flyer flex. Like, I know there's a lot of offseason still left to go, but I immediately projected Williams to have a 12% target share. And even with that, there's still an open 40% target share to go around. And that's not including if Kenny Golladay signs, I'll throw him 22% approximately. I'd have to look probably closer, but just off the top of my head, probably around 22%. But the reality is someone needs to catch passes from Jared Goff.
And maybe more with Marvin Jones gone, with everybody else gone. I mean, outside
TJ Hawkinson is the only other legitimate pass catcher in this offense.
Correct. So, I mean, if Golladay does resign, and it's not looking that likely right now, but if he does, then
the big talk for Golladay right now is the franchise tag.
Yeah.
And maybe a franchise tag and trade. That's what there was talk about that with Allen Robinson and the Bears, but I think that may be more likely right now with Kenny Golladay.
Yeah, but if he does end up back as a Lion, I mean, you're probably talking closer to 27, 28% with the rest of the scrubs they have behind them. And like you said, it's only TJ Hawkinson, really.
So that's why, like, Tyrell Williams has shown it in the past. He's had a whole year off. I know shoulder injuries are at least an eyebrow raise, but that isn't like a hamstring injury. No. That isn't I'm going to pull a hammy or I've got a soft tissue injury. No, like, and Williams missed the whole year. It's not like it was week 15 where he had a hip injury or something like that. So for them to sign him quickly and for the Raiders to cut some cap space, I think this is a very intriguing player that we shouldn't forget about.
He's a great best ball late round target right now. I mean, he's just forgotten, like you said. I mean, it's free. It really is. And he could be, a wide receiver 3 at the end of the year. I mean, why not?
I'll take the last round pick. I'll take a Tyrell Williams probably. He might be, I don't know, an honorary deep cut. I don't know if he's like, what would you say, Billy? Is that like a deep cut worth?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all.
Ouch. Okay. You could be top 36. You could be nothing.
Could be nothing. Doesn't make it.
We'll shift gears here back to the running back position. Alex Collins, speaking of forgotten players, re-upped with the Seahawks. So Carlos Hyde, Chris Carson, free agents, Rashad Penny, DJ Dallas. Rashad Penny and DJ Dallas are the only other running backs rostered. So with Alex Collins there, I anticipate that Seattle either re-signs Carson. I think that's about a 50-50 chance. We'll see. I'd take that over the field. But if not, I think Seattle drafts a running back high again. They were willing to do it with Rashad Penny, and DJ Dallas was a 3rd, 4th round pick. I don't think they go dip in the free agency market unless it's to bring back Chris Carson.
Yeah, I don't see him drafting a running back high again. They have too many holes on defense. I think they try to address those holes. They are going to try to do what they can to try to keep Russell Wilson as well. And if that means attacking, a lineman, and yeah, they don't have an early pick, but and there's not that great of a lineman class either. But I think that I just don't see them going out and drafting a running back, high in this draft pick. I could see them leaning on the combination. DJ Dallas actually showed fairly competent last year in the games that he was the featured back. So I could see them doing kind of a 1-2 punch between DJ and Rashad Penny, as long as Penny's is going to stay healthy here. But I think Alex Collins was an insurance signing. I don't think that they sign Alex Collins. They think that they're signing back Carson here.
Interesting.
Or they use it as leverage and try to negotiate the contract down. But I think that signing to me tells me that Carson's not coming back to Seattle.
See, I interpret it as a lack of confidence, not in Carson, but a lack of confidence in Rashad Penny. Like, Penny we thought, so Penny, tore his ACL in 2019, and that was like halfway through the year. And then he comes back, he starts the season on the PUP list. And then he doesn't come back until like week 14. And from then he doesn't do much with it. He doesn't get his yards per carry is pretty terrible. And then he gets injured week 16, 17 again. And I think that Alex Collins, just the familiarity, they need someone who doesn't have a lot of miles on him. And Alex Collins showed out. Like, at one point he was being drafted as an RB2 when he was on Baltimore, which is crazy to think. But I mean, there were even when the Ravens were being featured on primetime football, they were like, "Oh, Alex Collins, the reason why he can navigate the offensive line is because he was an Irish dancer." And then they panned to Alex Collins like at a recital or something doing some Irish dancing. So yeah, I think it speaks to more Rashad Penny and the question marks around that player.
But Rashad Penny tore his ACL in like the first or second week in December in 2019. I think it was like the end of the first week of December. So, I mean, missing a full year, like it wasn't out of the cards for him to miss the entire year this year because of when that injury took place. So I think yes, he hasn't performed up to his draft and where he was taken, but I think that you can't write him off right now. I mean, Carson is a tough running back, and for, he's well outperformed his draft stock and where this in Seattle and how they got him. But I think that, Rashad Penny being drafted where he was, the expectations were super high. Then he got injured. He played behind Carson. So I think that Seattle lets him play this year. I really do. And I personally don't think they re-signed Carson. I don't think they have, number one, the cap space that they have. I think they're like 18th overall in cap space, so they could make it work. But I think they have other holes that they need to address outside the running back position. And we've seen time and time again, I mean, the running back position is interchangeable. You can throw anyone back there and they may not work in one system and they'll work in another. So I think that with the amount of volume that Seattle runs, I think that you need two fairly competent running backs with the amount of volume they're getting. So to have a third with a familiar face like Alex Collins, and I'm not saying Alex Collins is a good running back, but he's more of just an insurance policy here for DJ Dallas and Rashad Penny.
All right. Well, we've got more to talk about in Seattle here, Billy, because within the last week and a half, Russell Wilson making headlines here. And we have to just be very clear. Russell Wilson has not demanded a trade. However, there seems to be a riff, and Seattle has been answering calls about him. He also is one of the few NFL players in any position to have a no trade clause in his contract. So if he were to be traded, he released through his agent that it would only be to the Cowboys, Saints, Raiders, or Bears. And if you were picking one of those four teams, who would Russell Wilson most likely end up on? Multiple choice.
not going to Dallas.
No, I agree.
I'd say Chicago. It just makes the most sense. They need a quarterback. They actually have weapons.
They have some defensive pieces to sell to Seattle.
some defensive pieces to sell. They have some picks to sell. I think that, I mean, they could even give him Trubisky, which is not saying much, but no, he's a free agent. But
Nick Foles,
they could give him Nick Foles, but yeah, it's a stretch. I could see it
Chicago
happening.
Bears fans are salivating right now.
I think it really just depends upon how broken this relationship truly is, and we only hear what we hear from the media, but we don't really know how is this relationship. Can it be mended? Can it not be mended? I think that's the answer or question that we have to ask ourselves. And if it can be, I think Russ is back in Seattle where he's used to, and they go again. But if anything were to happen, I think it's Chicago.
I'm looking at Seattle, and I'm looking at some of the decisions they've made with regard to scheme, especially in the second half of the year, and letting go of their offensive coordinator, Schottenheimer, and seeing how there was just the philosophical riff between throwing the ball and running the ball. And Pete Carroll is run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. We've seen Chris Carson have success. We've seen Rashad Penny and Chris Carson have running back 2 games in the same game. So when the Seahawks went from let Russ cook at the beginning of the year to let's ground and pound the ball, you saw that the offense just didn't look the same, that Russ didn't look as comfortable. He was
stagnant.
He was once again the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. He's taken so many hits, and he's 32 or so, 31, 32. This is a quarterback who needs an offensive line, and if he might force his way out if they don't address the offensive line.
Yeah, I could see it happening. I could, and Russ has always seemed to be like a team player. The fact that he's been this outspoken about it, I think enough is a red flag. And I think, time will tell, but if it does happen, it's not happening until after June 1st. So we have some time to see. Looking at his contract, there's just no way, shape, or form he's traded before June 1st because of that cap hit. After June 1st, it's very minimal. So we have some time to see how it unfolds.
Well, we'll stay in division and same position at quarterback. Now, John Lynch for the 49ers, the GM, he's commented numerous times this offseason that Jimmy Garoppolo will return to San Francisco as the quarterback. We've talked numerous times about how bad Jimmy G has looked at quarterback, but the one thing he has going for him, he's 22-8 in the 30 games he's played for the 49ers.
No, the defense is 22-8.
Winning forgives a lot of problems, Billy. And when you have an 11-12 win season, you're going to get a lot of errors forgiven and a lot of mistakes forgiven. So there are serious questions about his injury history, serious questions about his talent. But do you think that the 49ers start week 1 with Jimmy Garoppolo as quarterback in 2021?
I think it's a coin flip right now. As much as I don't want him back, and as we've seen them, give him a vote of confidence that he's our quarterback, which has to be done right now. I think, because let's face it, I think that the 49ers, this is the toughest division of football, the NFC West, between Seattle with Russell Wilson. If Russell Wilson leaves, great. They're the bottom of the barrel in the West. But you have Arizona, you have, who's been tough. And then you have the Rams, who have been outstanding. And they just added, my boy Stafford over here. So I think that that team is going to be the favorite right now to win the division. But if the 49ers get somebody like Deshaun Watson, that changes things. Deshaun Watson makes this 49er team in NFL, a Super Bowl contender, I think, right off the bat. And I don't think it happens. I would say they're probably going to find someone to bridge, quite frankly, if they do move away from Jimmy Garoppolo. But I could see them addressing, 12th pick with like a Mac Jones, somebody, 4th or 5th best quarterback in this draft class here, and then rolling with Jimmy G out of the gate. And we have ourselves kind of a, Philadelphia scenario where you have a quarterback and a center, but you have a rookie breathing down his neck. So I that's what I think is probably the most likely. I would really like to see Jimmy Garoppolo traded and out of this offense. I just think that he hasn't shown enough to get it done, and especially in a big game like the Super Bowl that we lost, and just they've really relied on the run game. They've really relied on the defense, and with all the weapons that we have at our disposal with, Kittle and Ayuk and Debo, and there's no excuse to be as pitiful as you have been at quarterback play with the yardage and totals. Yes, the wins are there, but that's a collaboration of defense, offense, kind of everything mixed between. And I just don't think. I think that record, honestly, with a quarterback of a higher caliber is more like 22-4, 22, something along, or sorry, 26-4, something along those lines, because we're a quarterback away from really contending.
The 49ers have so many pieces, but at the quarterback position, I know this is probably posturing, and maybe it's even building up the capital or the trade capital of Garoppolo. We'll see, but I agree with you. There are questions there. I think that they've got a lot of great pieces in many critical places. Their defensive line, their defense, they've got yards after catch, spectacular players, Ayuk, Kittle, Debo. So any quarterback will flourish in that system who's halfly competent. So we'll see what happens here. We'll move on, though. Cliff Kingsbury. This is a note you brought to us, Billy. Cliff Kingsbury came out today and expressed confidence in Chase Edmonds being the bell cow. And you know what I think? That's a load of cow dung. I don't believe it one bit. I think that's a totally terrible. Chase Edmonds. Here's the thing, though. Like, Chase Edmonds was a top 25 PPR running back, and he wasn't the lead back, and it didn't feel like it, and he didn't win you almost any weeks, but he was a high floor, very low ceiling running back who played all 16 games and who caught passes. And I don't think that they're going to scheme him back into 17, 18 carries a game, because the one game he did last season when Drake was out, he had like 21, 24 carries, something like that, and he did nothing with it. I don't believe it. I don't believe Cliff Kingsbury, especially at this point in the offseason.
So you're saying you have different definition of bell cow than Cliff Kingsbury.
I think that Cliff Kingsbury doesn't know what he's talking about at this point.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do. I don't think Drake resigns. Do we see Benjamin?
You know who the bell cow is for the Arizona Cardinals? Kyler Murray. That's the bell cow for the Arizona Cardinals.
Let's start giving JJ Watt carries.
Hey, he's caught a few passes in the end zone. So
I remember.
All right. I promised we would get back to Deshaun Watson. We have to talk a little bit more in depth about Watson and his situation, because it seems like time and again, Watson ends up in the news that he has reiterated through his agent that he will not play another down for the Texans and that he wants to be traded. Now, the Texans have not even picked up the phone on potential suitors. I think Ian Rappaport made a joke of does voicemail even exist anymore? Why are people calling phones? Like, aren't they just sending text messages? But the Texans have dug in on not trading their star quarterback. Billy, would 3 first-round picks and a starting quarterback get a deal done? Is that the type of deal that the Texans are like holding out for? Or are they actually just that stupid and not willing to trade Deshaun Watson at this point?
I think they're just afraid of looking, bad as they have for the previous couple of years with, especially getting rid of Hopkins and all the other moves they've made, with Tunsil and everything happening. So I think that they're hesitant to make any
They
moves.
could have gotten like a 3rd or 4th round pick for JJ Watt at least. Come on now.
And they just released them. Exactly. I think that was more out of respect for JJ Watt, quite frankly.
That's stupid though.
Yeah, I agree.
Like I know you want to get a retweet from Adam Schefter of like an attaboy, but like, come on now.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they could have got a late round pick for Watt. I think somebody would have given it, but I think that was more of an act of respect. But either way, I really think
disrespect to the rest of their organization.
It really is, but I think it's going to break down to time. As time moves on, I think that Deshaun Watson sticks to his guns, I think that the Texans realize he's either going to start sitting and we don't have a quarterback, or we're going to have to make a move. And I think if that's the scenario, I think eventually they get, multiple first round picks and a quarterback in return, maybe even a defender. And I know there was some talk about a buddy asked me, what would you give up as a Niner? Would you give up Jimmy G and Bosa and a first round pick? I said, absolutely. Right. You make those kind of moves for a franchise quarterback. We've talked about earlier is quarterback is your heart and soul of your team and is going to be the one leading you to victories. So I think that any team right now should be willing to pony up for somebody like Deshaun Watson. So, but then again, you have to worry, playing devil's advocate to my own discussion here is people may look at his antics here and say, do I want that in my locker room? What if he does that with our team? And so there's that flip side of the coin that you, as a GM, you may have to be thinking of as well. And don't get me wrong, I'm still signing Deshaun Watson as a GM if I can, because winning cures all. And but at the end of the day, it's probably in the back of some of these GMs' minds.
Just to push back on that a little bit, I think that everyone in the NFL knows what kind of donkeys the front office has been for the Houston Texans, and they also know what kind of efforts Deshaun Watson has put in for his community. And JJ Watt knows, like DeAndre Hopkins knows, he's got advocates outside of the organization who can speak to his character. So I'm not concerned. And he hasn't done anything other than say, y'all are running a terrible organization. I don't want to play for you. I get Brett Favre's, like, I understand where Brett Favre is coming from when he came out and said, like, no, like, Deshaun Watson, you should stick to your guns for your contract. But Brett Favre, what'd you do for your contract? Like, let's look in the mirror for a second. So I think that when it comes down to it, I agree with you, Billy. You have to make some seismic moves if you want to get out of the rut that is, a mediocre quarterback situation that would be in San Francisco, or maybe in Miami, or even Carolina has been a possible suitor. Name a team thrown around. David Tepper, the owner, has said, like, he will go to the ends of the earth to get himself a star quarterback, and he's willing to pay out the wazoo for that. So, Teddy Bridgewater, it seems like every day it's like Teddy Bridgewater might end up on the Saints. Teddy Bridgewater might end up on the Washington football team. Teddy Bridgewater he's not going to be a Panther.
It's emphasis on Bridge, Teddy Bridge.
Yeah, Teddy.
That's what he is. He's a bridge quarterback. And so yeah, a team needs to pay up, and they're going to have to in order to acquire him. I think it gets done though eventually. I think that Deshaun Watson has played his last down as a Houston Texan.
I agree. Adam Humphries for the Tennessee Titans. Well, no longer, because he was cut. Humphries will eventually join Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith in the free agency.
Sorry, what day was he cut on? Was it Wednesday? Please tell me it was hump day.
Sure.
That would have been awesome if Adam Humphries was cut
I just got that right now.
Over Bradley's head.
It's almost 1:00 in the morning. You can forgive me. Okay, so and here's the deal: is that the Titans are tighter on cap space. They did sign Tannehill to a bigger deal this past or an extension this past offseason. They re-signed Derrick Henry to an extension this last offseason this summer. Look for the Tennessee Titans to be in the market for signing a cheap quality wide receiver. I know the name hasn't been thrown out there yet among popular circles, but maybe a Marvin Jones going there, an older wide receiver who's still got something left in the tank. Marvin Jones finished as wide receiver 18 last year. Like, what? I also think that might be addressed in the draft. I still don't think this impacts A.J. Brown at all. If anything, based on who they bring in, A.J. Brown he's my dynasty wide receiver 1, but I think that this solidifies him in the top 10, if not the top 7 of wide receivers, just they've got such a void there. And that was my argument going into this offseason was who are they going to throw the ball to? And it was Corey Davis and it was A.J. Brown.
Yeah, now with Jonnu Smith potentially leaving as well and Corey Davis, there's going to be a lot of vacated targets here in Tennessee. It's going to be another Derrick Henry year and A.J. Brown year. So I think those are the only sure answers here that we have inside Tennessee, alongside Ryan Tannehill. So I love A.J. Brown too. I mean, you and I have gone through our debate. You know who my number one is. That changes though if Russ leaves.
Of course, I would downgrade DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett as well. Probably depends on who they replace him with, but it's still, you could a run first offense on with a not as good quarterback as Russell Wilson. Yikes. Okay, we got to talk about the Patriots again. I know we're circling back there, but they're getting key defensive players back who opted out. But there is concern that Julian Edelman might not return, given that he missed 10 games last season and he's not been healthy this offseason. He's not been healthy enough to come back. He struggled with drops, like really bad. He struggled with drops. That was one of at the time where he stopped playing, he was leading the league in drops by a significant margin. He just didn't look good, wasn't getting separation, and his knee is not healthy right now, and he's still going through rehab. Don't know what his prospects are going into the season, and he's not a young pup. So I think that there is concern about Julian Edelman even returning for the Patriots this year.
He's 34 years old. I mean, he's getting old. I mean, he did have a career game this year, or last year, I should say, but I could see him hanging up the cleats. I mean, this offense is looking dysfunctional at best.
Like, what is he playing for? Brady isn't there.
Yeah, there's really, he's going to retire and then sign with Tampa Bay. That's what's going to happen.
Maybe pull a Gronk.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I mean, he's kind of forgotten in drafts right now as well.
As you mentioned earlier, Washington football team parted ways with comeback player of the year, Alex Smith. Now, Smith did go 5-1 as the starter for Washington last season. Now, we can attribute that to the defense being solid and him being a game manager. He has 6-8 touchdown to interception ratio, which is not good. But possible suitors for Alex Smith include the Chicago Bears, and Ian Rappaport just came out with Jacksonville Jaguars as a possible suitor for Smith. And this move saved the Washington football team about $15 million in cap space. It's circling back to Jacksonville as a possibility that, of course, they're going to draft Lawrence at number 1, but they want to push him and they want a veteran quarterback there. And they saw what Alex Smith's tutelage did with Patrick Mahomes. And so, I mean, we'll see, but I think there is a market for a quarterback like Alex Smith.
Yeah, veteran presence. I mean, just the journey he took alone is enough leadership for a team to kind of collaborate together and make a push. So I personally would love to see him come back to the Niners as a backup and just be there as a presence and kind of reunite that team as well. I'm not sure. I don't think it happens, but it would be kind of a nice story as well for this offseason. But we talked about this in the podcast. We had mentioned about 3 or 4 podcasts ago that we didn't think he was going to resign just based upon the cap hit. And people thought it was going to be bad for PR, but no, it was a mutual departure. And 15 million cap space is a lot to save from a player being cut.
There was news coming out, I think 2 weeks ago or so, that Alex Smith in an interview said that the Washington football team didn't want him to succeed. And it would actually throw a wrinkle and wrench into their quarterback plans. And I'm like, well, of course it throws a wrench into their quarterback plans when you do something that no player has ever done before. Like, what do you expect? But he sounded like the Washington football team seemed a little salty about it, or were frustrated by the fact that he was performing well. So I wonder how much of that was just posturing that, yes, please, like, it's okay, just let me go. Or if there is a little bit of bad blood still there.
All of the above.
Okay, for time's sake, we'll keep moving on. Lots of news, lots of fun things. We'll talk about some running back news. Cameron Wolfe reporting that the Dolphins will bring in competition for the lead back role to Myles Gaskin.
That
This
was
should be
expected.
no surprise there. We expect someone to be drafted, or Aaron Jones possibly. But we'll talk about Aaron Jones here in a second. I think Gaskin showed that he can handle it, but I think that the Dolphins are smart in bringing in a veteran or bringing in a dynamic rookie. So just to push him or to take on the lead back role themselves. And we can be confident, I think, whoever wins the job is going to get the full workload. That's what we saw. We saw Salvin Ahmed. We saw Myles Gaskin. We saw at the beginning of the year, Jordan Howard get carries. And then as they saw he was ineffective, move away from him and start giving Gaskin and start giving Ahmed some run. So
he was on pace for some stupid stat. It was like, it was on pace for like some 16 yards for 16 carries and 16 touchdowns.
This is ridiculous.
It was some ridiculous.
He was like 4 or 5 games in, he had 4 or 5 touchdowns. So
yeah, and it was like 1 yard, 1 carry every time.
So dumb. All right. James Conner is unlikely to be re-signed by the Steelers. The Steelers are very tight on cap space, so no brainer there. The Packers, surprisingly, their GM just came out and said that the franchise tag is on the table for Aaron Jones. So keep your eyes out for whether the Packers tag Jones. If they tag Jones, they're not re-signing Jamal Williams, I think. I think it's going to be Jones or Williams and AJ Dillon going into next season. Maybe they sign, a depth piece running back or something like that. But really, it's going to be, I think, 2 main running backs, not the three-way cycle that we saw at the end of 2020.
I would love for Aaron Jones to get re-signed in Green Bay. I mean, I'm in these FFPC drafts right now. I know it's February and March. I'm already drafting an FFPC, but AJ Dillon, and this is how crazy this is. People are drafting AJ Dillon in round 4 and round 5, and that is way too rich for my blood with unknowns. I mean, they franchise tag Aaron Jones, and AJ Dillon goes from round 4 or 5 in those drafts to 12, 13. I mean, way down. I just can't take that gamble on that much of an uncertainty right now in these drafts. So I'm a little bit more of a conservative drafter in these best ball drafts, drafting less rookies, drafting more on what I find true and believe, and less free agent shifts as well. And as the draft happens, yes, I'll come back to these drafts and draft a little bit more aggressively. But AJ Dillon round 4 and 5 is just crazy to me right now.
Yeah, no way. That makes no sense, especially with the lack of clarity and the GM coming out saying this is on the table. Like, we didn't think that this was on the table. Like, this is the first, like when it was reported, I didn't think Jones was going to resign. Initially we thought the Miami Dolphins were going to be the primary suitor, maybe the Buffalo Bills, but the Packers could tag him, and that would put the end to a lot of speculation. Now, we'll talk about the Steelers. We've mentioned that their cap situation has been extremely tight. They don't anticipate to re-sign James Conner. Vance McDonald retired. Juju is likely gone due to cap concerns. There were early talks of optimism that Juju might re-sign, and Juju said that he would be willing to re-sign, but there's no way based on his market that he resigns, especially with some of the needs that some other teams have, like the Giants. We'll get to in a second. They need a number 1 wide receiver. Miami, definitely. The Packers maybe in the market for a wide receiver. But Big Ben restructured his deal, and he is on a 1-year deal. This is probably going to be his final season with the Pittsburgh Steelers and probably in his NFL career. His arm looks shot. It looked like he was just making a lot of mistakes. They were catering the offense to the fact that he couldn't throw the ball downfield anymore. So he led the league in pass attempts, but he had one of the shortest yards, average depth of target in the NFL. So I think the Steelers are in singular tank mode. I don't think they're going to retain a ton of talent, and that's going to be a problem for them, especially with rising teams like the Browns and the Ravens, and depending on how the Bengals do.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens. I mean, never count them out though. They've shown adversity and have always risen to the occasion, and their defense always seems to be pretty legit. So I never count the Steelers out ever, and especially with Big Ben back there still, in the amount of times they're going to throw this ball, I think that they're going to be just as good as anyone. If, or I should say, not if he's back now with his restructure, but I think they're just as good as anyone when he's under helm. It's just a matter of them staying healthy and being able to staying healthy in order to compete is what I'm trying to say.
Juju leaves, let's say. Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson, are they both wide receiver ones?
I don't trust Claypool. He was electric, but he was too inconsistent for me. And that's the debate we're going to see all offseason. Claypool or Deontay Johnson. And for me, I'm going to take targets and target share any day of the week over electric big plays. It's just
touchdowns are fluky.
They're very fluky, but it's we've talked about it.
He also scored a couple of rushing touchdowns, which you can't count on either.
Yeah, but we've talked about time and time again. Opportunity is king in fantasy football. And if you're getting the ball thrown at you 13, 14 times, those opportunities open up so many more avenues for touchdowns, yardage, you name it. And so I'm taking the for sure bet with, double-digit targets every game. And yes, he's got brick hands. Hopefully he can work on it this offseason and correct some of those issues. But I mean, he was to drop like 4 passes in like the first quarter of that game, got benched. I just think though that the amount of targets that he's seeing is going to outweigh the 1-2 touchdown games that we're going to see out of Claypool. And Claypool's still, raw talent right now. He's rookie last year, and it's going to take a little bit more time to develop.
Yeah, I think that the Deontay Johnson, I was not as in on Deontay Johnson last year, but I think that I haven't done the projections for Pittsburgh yet. I'm about halfway through right now, but that's going to be something that I'm going to be keeping my eye on here.
He was one of my most owned wide receivers last year. I mean, you were able to get him in around 11, 12 in some drafts at the beginning of the year, and he started dipping up in like round 9 back
when the
8.
Deontay Truthers came out, right?
When all the Deontay Truthers came out, but it was like the value was just there, and you knew the opportunities were there, and the amount that this team always throws the ball. They're always throwing the ball 30, 40 times a game easily. And we saw what they threw like 63 times versus the Browns, I think it was. I mean, yeah, they were down 24-0 and like.
I'm so glad I had the Big Ben, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Eric Ebron stack in that game because it was fire.
I was up
my
on you by like
DraftKings was like, oh,
I was up on you by like 100 points until that game started, and then it's just crazy.
And
I was like, what happened?
And Big Ben was my multiplier too. So it
such an ugly game.
Oh man. Anyways, all right, let's continue on. The Vikings, Minnesota Vikings released veteran Kyle Rudolph. We mentioned Rudolph before. He's expected to garner starter level interest across the league. It didn't look like he had lost a step. Rudolph has always been like a tight end 10 to tight end 12. Touchdowns will come here or there. You'd expect 3 catches for 40 yards. Nothing spectacular. It's not like he's an exceptional talent at that position, but a pretty consistent low-end tight end 1. Now, an up-and-coming tight end that we have to keep our eyes out is the one that's hopefully going to replace him in Minnesota, and that is Irv Smith Jr. And the 4 games that Rudolph missed this past season, Irv Smith was the tight end 4 in points. So I don't think that Irv Smith, volume wise, you'd expect him to be at least a low end tight end 1. He was looked at a lot in the end zone. He's a bigger body player, got some good moves. He's very young. I think he's like 21 or 22 years old. So still a lot of development there. I'm excited for Irv Smith. And I'm also interested in very deep leagues, 2 tight end leagues, of just stashing Tyler Conklin. Just stash him. Just put him away. Like if you got a deep bench and he's the backup tight end for the Vikings, I'm just saying that, just putting that out there. It's March 6th now of 2021. Just put Tyler Conklin on your bench in 2 tight end leagues.
Bradley, the tight end whisperer over here. See, I'm not as high on Irv Smith as a lot of people are right now, and it breaks down to just numbers simply. I mean, he's going to be the 4th option at best on this offense, behind Jefferson, behind Thielen, behind Dalvin Cook, and so I think that he's going to have some great games. I think he's going to show up some games, but I think he's going to have a lot of inconsistency as well. So best ball target. Great, fine, but every week starter, I'm just not sold on him, and this offense being able to support 4 top tier, offensive weapons.
All right, we keep jumping around here. The New York Jets are open to trading Sam Darnold. They've made that clear, and they are answering calls for Darnold. But it seems like they're playing it along. They're not eager to make a decision, but they are open to listening. And I think that's the right call right now, seeing what values they can get for Sam Darnold. It would be great if they could get a 2nd-round pick. I don't think he could garner a 3rd-round pick or a 1st-round pick here.
No.
But if they can get a 2nd, I would take that as a win, because you're going to draft Fields at 102, and then you're going to get another 2nd-round pick flipping Darnold here. I was looking at early season tape on Darnold, and it just looked like he was off. It looked like he was scared for the first few games of the season. I know
I'd be scared too with Adam Gase as my coach. He sucks.
Yes. Okay. You cut me off. I see how it is. Although that's what Adam Gase does to all the fantasy value of any quarterback he works with. Sans Peyton Manning. Sans Peyton Manning. Although Peyton Manning's the ones making the calls on the plays anyways, let's be honest. So I think that, is Sam Darnold ruined? He was seeing ghosts 2 years ago. Last year, he just looked bad. Lots of passes I noticed just off the hands of receivers. It looked like a backup.
Throwing to. I mean, his wide receiver
Jamison Crowder.
Yeah, he was injured like a quarter of the year, and then you have Herndon, who's been in and out. You have Brashad Perriman, for crying out loud. I mean, Mims was hurt for his hamstring for like 6 weeks. And then you have Adam Gase as your head coach. You have Frank Gore as your running back 1. I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, this team was a mess. I haven't given up on Darnold. I liked him as a prospect coming out of college. He landed in a bad situation at the Jets, didn't have really any weapons. Then they get Gase, and the whole team is gazed and confused. So I never write anyone off if Gase is a head coach until he's gone. And then you get a full year cycle, then we can write him off. But until then, this time next year, I'll write him off, but not right now.
You go by your Sam Darnold shares. Let me know how it goes. Usually, so what I've found generally is that there's like the people who are Sam Darnold believers already roster Sam Darnold. Like, and you're not going to be able to prize.
Or it's the people who don't want to pay for a quarterback in a football league, and
sure, and then they want more for what value is. I think Sam Darnold is overpriced at this point, just based on who has him on their teams. Okay, Delaney Walker said he intended to play in 2021. He was a top 10 PPR tight end from 2013 to 2017, and it was only derailed because of injuries. It wasn't play. He didn't look like he was slowing down. There were he seemed like he was a consistent outlet in the receiving option for Tennessee. However, he is 36 at this point and didn't play last year, not due to injury, but he was released and had concerns about how the league was handling the COVID situation. So he sat out the year with regard to that. He does intend to play this year. He'll get practice squad invites, I think, but I'm not optimistic of him reclaiming even a top 20 tight end spot.
Yeah. Next player.
Okay. Speaking of tight ends, Jared Cook and Josh Hill both released for the Saints. Adam Troutman is the man for now. He is a 3rd-round rookie out of University of Dayton. Shout out the Flyers.
You forgot the other tight end.
Oh, yes. Their quarterback tight end hybrid, wide receiver running back hybrid, Taysom Hill. He's still there. Okay. Moving on. Adam Troutman had 16 targets last season. We anticipate that going up. There's a lot of questions about the quarterback position, so don't get like crazy about Adam Troutman. But the Saints may sign a lower tier vet to compete with Troutman here. And it's Troutman. His arrow seems to be going up, but the Browns, as we mentioned earlier, may be interested in Kyle Rudolph. And if that's the case, David Njoku may be looking for another place to play. That's what Mary Kay Cabot out of the Cleveland Plain Dealer has reported. So Harrison Bryant, the now second-year tight end, his stock seems to be going down a little bit, whereas Troutman's as a second-year tight end is going up with these releases.
Yeah, I like Troutman. I'm just more concerned about quarterback. Who's going to be throwing the ball, right? If it's Winston, okay, I'm more in on Troutman. If it's Taysom Hill, I'm completely out. I just can't do it. And you know how I feel about Taysom Hill, and I just think that it's going to kill this entire offense with him at helm if he is the one behind. So I would not be surprised, like you said, if they do sign somebody else. I agree. And we're only about 12 days away from finding out.
Oh, so exciting. So Golden Tate, the last player we'll talk about here of significant fantasy relevance from the offensive side.
Oh, don't undercut IDP leagues that we have coming up.
I mentioned the offensive side. So Golden Tate is released, temporarily bumps up the stock of Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, but this is a slam dunk place where we expect a wide receiver one to be either signed or drafted. Tate didn't get along with this new regime. There seemed to be fighting with other players, fighting with other teams. His cut created a $6 million cap space. He was suspended for 4 games due to PEDs, but mostly ignored by Daniel Jones in the pass game. He's no longer the player he used to be on the Lions and the Seahawks. So I don't expect Golden Tate to regain fantasy relevance. I think once he was traded to Philadelphia, the fantasy relevance just stock down, and there's no recovery here. He might sign a 1-year prove-it deal somewhere, but I'm not excited about Golden Tate.
Yeah, me neither. It was kind of expected to see him get cut too with the cap hit that he had.
For sure. Now, Billy, as you mentioned, free agency begins in 12 days, which is very exciting. And actually, 11 days for me, less than 11 days now, because it's now 1:13 in the morning. Oh man, it's both like, oh, this is so late, but also I have to admit, I have really missed the midnight shows or podcasts that we've been doing, because it's just a special time. It's like the twilight. Like if I walked outside, I don't even know if the roads exist, during this time. I might have to say like, hey, we need a program for a road here. I'm going on I don't know, because of COVID, our 24-hour restaurants or drive-thrus open anymore. Like, I don't know anymore.
It brings us back to this is when we started. This is the beginning of the year for us. We recorded every night at midnight your time, 9 my time, and we it takes me back. I feel like it's the beginning of our podcast again, recording this late. And I mean, I liked it. I moved it up initially for you. So when you said, hey, do you want to move it back to 9? I was all for it. I was like, sure.
Billy was like, is he joking? Yes. This is where you get the trade offer and you're looking at it, you're like, is this a joke?
Yeah.
Or am I missing something?
There's a catch here.
Smash.
There's a catch here.
So we've got a few players who have been tagged prior to free agency. And we've got Pro Bowl safety Justin Simmons for the Broncos. We've got offensive tackle Taylor Moton as well. Who's the third? I can't remember. There was a third one who's been franchise tagged already. I can't remember. I'm brain farting. It's 11:15 in the morning. You're going to have to forgive me. But one other note.
He added a 1 there.
It's 115 in my brain. It's Friday. I've had a long week. I've had 2 classes this week for my grad classes that have both been 3 hours long. So it's all good. This is part of the grind. I love it. And so one last thing, notable signing for the Bills, an extension of Micah Hyde. So last offseason, they extended star cornerback White. And why am I blanking on his first name? Tre'Davious White. Yep. So Tre'Davious White was
stud.
Absolutely arguably the best cornerback in the NFL, aside from Jair Alexander. I would probably put Alexander just a tad ahead of White, but they're elite cornerbacks for sure. And so Hyde also bolsters or maintains that strong secondary for the Bills here.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the Bills get Hyde back. Hyde's an electric safety and is kind of a focal point in this defense. So very good signing here by the Bills. Well, everybody, before we end the show, I just wanted to let everybody know that we are hosting our first annual Fantasy Football Fanalist Tournament. Make sure to go to our website at fantasyfootballfanalist.com and click on the tournament tab to read and learn all about the tournament. If you have any questions, make sure to message us either on Twitter, Facebook, or our email at info@ffanalyst.com. That is a wrap. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at @FFFanalyst, at FFMusio, and at FFStalder, or on Facebook at Fantasy Football Fanalists. Please subscribe to our Twitch and YouTube channels at Fantasy Football Fanalists. We still need to get to 100 subscribers, so any help there would be greatly appreciated, so we can customize our UPC there. And then, as I said, make sure to go to our website at fantasyfootballfanalist.com, where you can find all the social buttons I just mentioned. And you can also find a lot of articles. And we have an animal writing for us. His name is Wayne. And this dude just pumps out content like nobody's business. Like
He's a superstar.
I can't even keep up with him. Like I had to give him access to the website. That's how fast he was writing. And I'm just like, dude, I can't post these fast enough. Like, here's access. Go ahead and log yourself in and post it, and then it'll give me the option to publish it. So Wayne is an animal. He's extremely bright, posting up a bunch of information.
I love reading his stuff. It's not just good data. It's also extremely engaging.
It is engaging.
And lots of pop culture references, tangents. Absolutely. Just the way he thinks allows you to, like, his way of thinking allows you to get into the stats and set a frame and structure for how to better understand the context of what the article is trying to get at. So, hey, bravo, Wayne.
Bravo, Wayne. I mean, he keeps it light, right? With all that data and the charts and the numbers, it can be a dry read, but with Wayne's writing and the style that he does it, he just does a fantastic job with keeping the readers engaged and keeping it light as well. So wanted to give Wayne a shout out there because he's just been an absolute animal, and I really appreciate you, buddy, and what you've done for the site. So that's it, guys. Articles, rankings, DFS content once we start back up there and more.
Billy, projections will be up soon.
That's
projections
right.
will be up soon. I'm working on it. Yeah, this week's been a busy week, but I was able to get about A to Z. I was able to get to the Kansas City Chiefs. So we're almost there. Once we get the projections up, it'll be a really exciting thing to look at.
So Bradley's on K and I'm still on A. I haven't even started my projections for the year. So I think this happened last year. Bradley was finished and I was on like Buffalo. And you had to wait for me to catch up.
I am done. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah, how the hell did you get done? You were on like C 2 days ago. So Bradley gets his rankings done a lot sooner than I do. So for those of you, we'll post Bradley's this year before mine, so that way you have something to read, and for at least a few weeks before mine get posted, because Bradley will definitely beat me by multiple weeks. So thanks for joining the show, everybody. We always appreciate your support. And we'll see you all back next week. We're back to the weekly grind here. As long as there's something to talk about and nothing happens in the Stalder house or the Museo house, we'll see you here next Friday. Good night.